Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's podcast, we have something for everyone because everyone needs to know about your money and your finances and your credit scores and credit cards versus debit cards. Everyone needs to know about this. And here to educate me and you, we have Sharif Strange. Hey, Sharif!
How's it
We're
going?
waving and we're waving. How are you?
Great, great.
Good.
I can't complain. Another day alive, another day on this earth is another day to get after it. So that's a
That's
blessing.
true. And that's exactly what you're about to do. So, where in the world are you?
Currently in Maryland, Severn, Maryland to be exact. Closer to Baltimore. I know more people are familiar with the Baltimore side of Maryland, so I'm a little bit up there.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so let's get into this financial literacy
Yeah.
because I have a lot of questions and you have a lot of information.
Yes.
So, my first question for you, Sharif, what is financial literacy? We hear those two words all the time. And why is it important for just like your everyday
Hmm.
person to know what this is?
So first off, that's a very tough question, but to put it in the most simplest way, it's learn about how money works. I mean,
Okay.
to be financial literate, you kind of have to know the ins and outs of how money flows. And a lot of times I use the analogy of water. Money flow just like water.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's not. But if you know how to create a ravine, the money will always flow.
I love that. I love that analogy. Why do you think financial education is often missing from school curriculums? I remember when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago, the only like financial class they had was economics.
Yes, I actually
And
look in economics.
right. And like within that class, they only spoke a little bit about like filling out a check, which I mean, it's almost obsolete in 2025, but like
Mhm.
filling out a check and balancing your checkbook and just like real basic stuff. And they did not stay on it long at all. But
Yep.
now in 2025, to my knowledge, I don't think they're talking about financial education at all.
So, it's funny. They're not. I still have younger siblings who are currently in school, and I talk to them a lot about what's going on in there, what they're teaching you guys still.
Hmm.
Of course, it's just your same core subjects. Nothing really in the curriculum that specifies an education on financial decisions and stuff like that. And to be the blunt, honest truth is, it's not required by the federal government. So it leaves it up to the states, the districts, on whether or not they want to incorporate that into their curriculum, and a lot of times they don't. Whether that be because of budget, I mean, it's not enough money for it, or it's just something they offer as an additional option. I know back when I was in school, I did take extra classes for a program. I honestly can't remember the name of the program off the top of my head, but it was a financial literacy program that was available through my school. So it's not in the curriculums. It's just regular core subjects that we're all used to learning. But um, I mean, the truth is, it's just not required. And a lot of times, when you leave it up to the state and the district, it's a toss up. So if you're really interested, there are programs out there that you can look for. Um, but it'll probably be outside of your normal school curriculum. It's not something that you'll take at school unless you're doing economics, as you said.
Do you think that because most schools, I'm not going to say all because
Hmm.
obviously I don't know, but do you think because most schools are not teaching financial education, financial literacy, that it is directly affecting our students?
Of course. I mean, it all starts when you're younger. Obviously, that's when you're the most malleable. That's when you pick up a lot of information and you retain a lot. As we get older, we learn a lot more. There's a lot of space in our brain to retain a lot of information that we learn. Um, and I will say this, because it's not in our school's curriculums for the generations coming to learn this information, a lot of times kids emulate their parents' financial habits, whether that be good or bad. Um, that's just what they look at. That's the only thing they have to go off of. If they're not being taught this in school, if their parent maybe not have the best financial habits or decisions, they're going to follow that and emulate that as well. So it's definitely affecting our children, for sure.
What would you say are the biggest myths people believe about money?
I know everyone's experienced this before. I mean,
Okay.
any of the guests watching, I'm sure they've probably at one point felt like money was a scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of the previous point that is not taught in schools. It's not something we grow up knowing a lot about, and maybe our parents in the household didn't speak of it much, or there's a lot of reasons behind why a lot of people believe money may be evil or something to shy away from, and things of that nature. The biggest one is debt is always bad. Um, when you hear debt, you immediately associate negativity to it because
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to be in debt. It's
Right.
true.
Yeah.
But there is something called good debt. There's a such thing. And I'll speak about that a little bit more later on. That's one of the big ones though. Debt is always bad. Only rich people invest, which is not true. Um, let's see. Budgeting means deprivation. Okay, so when you plan for your future, and this is what I mean when I say when you create a ravine, budgeting allows you some space um, for money to flow through. A lot of people they like to hold on to money when they get it, but I don't really believe in that. I think money flows, as I said, like water. And when you let some of that money flow out, you allow more space for money to come in. And budgeting definitely helps you with that. I mean that's the main three that I'll say, or four. Sorry, that money
Okay.
is like this big, scary, bad thing. Debt is always bad, which is not true. Um, only a certain type of people invest, which is also not true. And budgeting means deprivation.
How
So
can someone who's listening right now, listening to you, learning from you, Sharif, right now, how can they start improving their financial literacy?
I hate to say this only because I feel like it's cliche, but books. to,
Okay.
to be honest, to be brutally honest, go to your local library. It's free. Get a library card. Go to the financial literacy section and just pick up the first book you see. If it's something that may be easy read for you, you skim through the pages, just
Hmm.
give it a shot. I think a lot of people, the biggest problem is just starting with it. And once you get over that hump, it becomes a lot more clear to you. Um, as I said before, because of these myths that surrounds money, people tend to not do the due diligence and try to educate themselves and learn about it. And for that reason, I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is just picking up a book at your local library. It's free. Check it out. Give it a shot. If it's an easy read to you, you feel like it's something that you'll be able to stick with, just try. I mean, that's my biggest thing is like your local library. I mean, if there's something that you specifically have a problem with, Google is there for us. I mean, we have plenty of tools nowadays in this age. I mean, there's plenty of ways, plenty of resources, plenty of tools that you can utilize, and it's at your disposal to educate yourself.
Well, I know, speaking of books, and this is not a paid ad or anything like that, but Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Ooh,
I'm sure you're familiar with that series, Sharif, but Rich Dad Poor Dad, something that I've read and I've studied. I still implement the things that he speaks about. But Rich Dad Poor Dad is an excellent book
yeah,
for financial literacy and financial education. And he has practically a curriculum
there you go.
that you can follow, and it's from beginner to
Yep,
immediate to expert.
yep.
He even has a like a board game, sort of like Monopoly for the kids and for the adults. So that's a great financial literacy book. As you were talking about books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I could have
Definitely.
recommended a better book, Crystal.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the biggest ones. I mean, it's a top seller for a reason. I mean, if you need something, just a one and done book, just something that you want to start with and even keep for a long time. Rich Dad Poor Dad is one of my top recommendations for that. And I guess just to add to that, I do have another book recommendation, and it's not so much specifically for financial literacy, but it'll kind of get you in the mindset of where to start. It's called Atomic Habits. And I think a lot of times people and money usually don't agree with each other when the habit is implemented incorrectly, if that makes sense. If you
Yes.
don't have the correct money habits, it just it won't work. It won't stick. It won't flow as it's supposed to. And I think that's where it starts is our habits. So Atomic Habits is another really good recommendation. If you can get those two together, Atomic Habits and Rich Dad Poor Dad, you'll be set. You'll be
You you will be set, and you can thank me, Crystal, and Sharif.
yes. As we said, this isn't paid advertisement or anything.
No
This is
paid advertisement.
from our personal experience. So what we're telling you right now is very, it's the real.
It
So
is. It absolutely is. Can you tell us the difference between being rich and being financially well?
it's a really good question, Crystal. So my personal opinion, it comes down to perception. Um, if you look at, let's say, Forbes or a lot of these big money washers, they'll tell you about the 10% and things of that nature. The people all the way at the top who make the big bucks. But honestly, I think for me, it comes down to perception. Whatever you feel like, if you're able to invest, save, pay for your bills, and still have a little bit for yourself, I think you're fine. You're well off. The average salary right now in the country is 50,000. So a lot of people think, okay, as long as I make 50,000, I'm pretty much set. But honestly, it all comes down to what your bills are. The cost of living is pretty high depending on where you're at. But as of right now, they'll tell you 50,000, 50 to 70,000 is like the average salary in the country. But honestly, I think it all comes down to perception, if I'm being honest.
Sharif, tell us how you got into this space of teaching and coaching about financial literacy.
My household never talked about money. Growing up, neither my dad nor my mom ever spoke to me about money. And to be quite frank, Crystal, we didn't have a lot of it. And because of that, it kind of lit that fire and it made me want to go out and learn a little bit more about it because I just kind of wondered why we could never keep any, to be honest. And the same questions you asked before, why isn't this taught in schools and stuff like that? I've always had those questions going and going. And I said, you know what, one day I'm just going to go ahead, go to my local library, pick up a book and start reading about it. And I did. And from that point on, I kind of just fell in love with the idea of this big scary thing that people don't really talk about in my household, specifically didn't really talk about. To be that knowledgeable about something and be able to teach other people, because I can assume if I was going through what I was going through at home and my parents were teaching me about it, there has to be plenty of other people who weren't taught as well. And I just kind of took it upon myself to be that person to go out and kind of educate people and let them know certain things and show them little tips and tricks on things that I've done to help me out along the way.
What would you suggest, Sharif? Because money was not talked about in my household either. It was like this secret
Mm-hmm.
between the adults and the children. You don't need to know about it, which is incorrect.
Yep.
What would you say parents should be the first thing that a parent needs to speak about with their child? Because I'm of the belief, and I feel like you are too, that parents need to speak with their children about money and finances. It's very important. Yes, we need it in the schools,
Mm-hmm.
but we need it even more at home.
Yes.
So, what would you suggest would be the first thing that parents need to speak about as far as money with their children?
So I've had this debate for a long time between saving and investing, and it's so funny because I actually speak to my younger siblings about this quite frequently. And the first thing I would start with saving, because a lot of people, that's their biggest problem, is saving money. As soon as we get it, we want to spend it. We worked hard for it, so we deserve to treat ourselves, which is very true. I'm not saying it's not, but maybe considering saving a percentage of it, you can still use it to how you please, but saving a percentage of it, letting that compound over time, could do you a great justice in the end. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to teach our kids saving first, and then we can start talking about investing. But you can't invest anything if you don't have anything saved. So
It's the truth. It's the truth. Let's talk about credit scores. We hear about credit scores all the time and how they affect everything we do, from getting an apartment to insurance, buying a car.
everything.
What exactly is a credit score and how is it calculated? Like, I do not know how it's calculated.
Okay. So you have your FICO, you have your Vantage score. People use different softwares to check their credit scores. Some people use Credit Karma. Some people go to Experian.com. You might have it through your bank, depending on what bank you use. But really, it's just a three-digit number based on your payment history, how much debt you carry, how long you've had your credit, the types of credit you use, and your recent increase. So I want to make this apparent to all the guests watching. Just because you have a 6 to 800 credit score doesn't necessarily mean that you have good credit. And here's why.
Okay.
Lenders, a lot of times, not only look at your credit score, but your credit history. Now, a lot of people who have credit, they might know this. When you first start out getting credit, you'll start out with a high 600 score, maybe a low 700 score, but you have no history. So a lender will look at your score and say, hey, okay, this person has a high score, but they've only had credit for maybe a year. This person still isn't trustworthy because they haven't carried credit for long enough for us to trust them to give them any type of money. I mean, I look at the banks like an entity, like a person. If you were to go to someone and say, hey, I would like to borrow $10,000, that person is going to say, well, can I trust you with $10,000? Am I going to get my $10,000 back? I mean,
Yes.
what's going on here, right?
Yes.
So look at the banks the same way. They're really looking at your history, and you honestly, you can look at your credit score like your background check. If you were to go to apply for a job or apply for anything else, it could be looked at as like a part of your background check, and that's the stuff that they look at. So to all the guests out there, I mean, pay more attention to your credit history rather than your score. Your score is great because that's the first thing that people see. But a lot of lenders, they look at your history rather than just your score. I always recommend having at least 3 to 5 years of history before you apply for anything.
What would you say, and maybe this is factual somewhere, what is considered a good, bad, and excellent credit score?
Okay. So according to FICO, anything below 580 is poor. 580 to 669 is fair. 670 to 739 is good. 740 to 799 is very good, and 800 plus is excellent.
How does credit history, which you spoke about, is probably more important than your credit score? How does credit history impact your ability to buy a home, rent an apartment, even get a job?
Yeah, so pretty much as I was saying, they're looking at, excuse me, how long you've had that history and whether or not they can trust you with it. I mean, and here's a little trick, a little tip I'm gonna put out there. Okay, there's something called AUs, authorized users, and for all the guests out there, this is some game. So if you have only, let's say, a year's worth of your own credit history, you might have gotten a secured credit card a year ago, or you might have gotten um, a Net 5 account through a merchandising um, store or something like that. If you only have a year's worth of history, but you want to go and apply for a house or an apartment or even get a job, as you spoke of, you can get an authorized user. Now, some people go to websites and buy authorized users. Now, I would recommend against that. The route that I took was to look at a family member that's had credit history for a long time. If you have a family member that has credit, and they've had credit for a long time, I would ask them to become an authorized user on their account. And what that means is your name is now attached to their credit account. So if they have 10 plus years of credit history, now when a lender or someone who is approving you for your house or your apartment or your job, they're going to look at your profile and see that 10 plus years of credit history because you're an authorized user on that person's account.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Um, let's see, where are we at? What are some common mistakes that people make that ends up lowering their credit score?
Okay, the big one, maxing out your cards. You know,
Mm.
it happens to all of us. I'll be honest, I'm a victim of that, max on my credit card. Okay, I'm still human. I'm not perfect. This was before I started to learn a lot more about credit. And when I was a little bit younger, got my first few credit cards and I maxed them out because I thought like everyone else and said, wow, I just got $10,000 out of thin air. Hmm. It's like free money, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but no, maxing out your credit cards definitely hurts you very bad. Late payments as well does hurt you. And I mean, there are workarounds when a lender looks at your profile. There are ways that you can pretty much um, take care of those late payments and those maxed out cards. But those are the top two common mistakes: is maxing out your credit cards and late payments. Um, if I had to say another one, applying for too many accounts too soon. So I love to try to use like analogies. As I said before, if you look at a bank like a person, you can go ask someone for $10,000 and they might give it to you, but then a week later you might ask for another 10,000. 2 weeks after that, it might ask for another 10,000. Eventually, they're going to be like, okay, what's going on here? So,
And
top,
eventually they're going to say no.
exactly. I mean, and that's what we don't want to hear is no. But if you ask for too much credit at once, they'll definitely the banks will definitely deny you, especially if you already don't have that history. So late payments, maxing out your cards, applying for too much credit at once. Um, yeah, those are like the top three.
What can someone do to start repairing their credit? They've maxed out their credit card, or because hopefully, and maybe someone listening has done all three or all four: max out the credit card, open up too much credit too soon, late payments, did everything that you just listed, Sharif. Now, how can I fix it?
Okay, so it's all about where you want to start. Um, let's have an hypothetical situation here between me and you, Crystal. What's the one thing that you feel like you want to take care of immediately? What do you feel like is hurting you the most? My plan of execution when I'm dealing with the client,
Mhm.
if anyone has reached out to me before, you can email me at triconenterprisesinfo@gmail.com. If you have anything going on with your credit, let's say you have a max out card or you have late payments, I'll take a look at your profile for you, see what's hurting you the most. I'll be able to tell you exactly what is hurting you the most. A lot of times, from the clients, from experience, what I've noticed is they have a lot of inquiries and late payments. A lot of people surprisingly don't max out their cards as much as I thought they would have because I was a big victim of that. It's really just late payments and trying to get too much credit at once. And I think it's because we see that money come in at first, and we're like, ooh, okay, I get 10,000 out of thin air. Let me try for another. A lot of times you can get those inquiries removed. Inquiries fall off depending on the inquiry you have after 5 years. If you go through, let's say, a dealership, a lot of times dealer dealer inquiries fall off after 5 years. Um, it all comes down to what type of inquiries you have and what exactly is going on with your profile. But I'll be able to take a look at it and tell you exactly what's going on. But
Is
also,
this? Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is this? I know everything an individual cannot do. They probably need to seek professional help from someone like yourself. Are there things that I could do and fix myself?
Yep. So one of them is I highly recommend finding an authorized user. And the reason being is because not only does it add credit history to your account, if that person has 10 plus years of history, I could assume they have a pretty high limit and balance. So if you're maxed out at 10,000 on your credit profile, if that authorized user has a limit of 10,000 in the green, it kind of cancels out because now it's looked at as your profile now having a limit of 20,000 rather than your maxed out 10,000. Does that make sense?
That does. That does.
So I
Let's
highly
talk.
recommend looking for an authorized user.
Okay. Let's talk about credit cards versus debit cards.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference?
Okay. When you use a credit card, you're gonna have to pay that money back. That's the biggest thing. I don't want anyone to have the misconception about credit that it's free money. And I always tell anybody watching, all my clients, eventually you will have to pay something back. If you take money, you have to pay it back. I will put that out there. But there are certain ways that you can buy more time depending on your financial situation. If you can't pay it back at that moment, there are certain ways to go around that. But back to your question, credit cards and debit cards. A debit card is your money. Um, you just made $10. You use your debit card. You go spend $10. Your $10 is gone. That's it. You restart. With a credit card, let's say for instance, you get approved for I just like 10,000. It's an easy number. You get approved for 10,000. You go and spend that 10,000. That credit card may have an interest rate on that credit card. Excuse me. Let's just say that interest rate is 10%. Some credit cards go up to 30 plus. So I highly recommend before you apply for any credit card, look at their APR rate. And if you're in luck, if you find a good one, I have some recommendations as well. You will find credit cards that have 0% APR for the first 12 months. So that means your credit card could be looked at as a debit card for the first 12 months. You spend that money, you will have to pay it back. Excuse me. Don't look at it like a debit card. You will have to pay it back, but it will be 0% interest for the first year. So, you won't have to think about any additional money on however much you spent per the interest for the first 12 months. Some have the first 14 months. I mean, you really just have to look. I know Wells Fargo has a really good program for their credit cards. I believe it's 12 months. I would have to double check, so please don't quote me on that at the moment, but I will say I would highly recommend looking into Wells Fargo credit cards. Navy Federal is also a really good one. Any credit union, I always recommend credit unions. They're really good.
I'm going to throw in our disclaimer here, Sharif. Now, Sharif is giving us very good factual but general financial literacy information.
Yes.
So please go and do your research yourself. Speak to a professional yourself to get very specific information that you need for, increasing your credit score, debit cards, credit cards, things like that. So again, Sharif has given us great information, but general information. If you want something more specific, consult a professional that can help you with that.
I highly agree.
Thank you.
I mean, and here's the thing. I'm sorry I didn't put that out sooner. When I can start talking about finances and stuff like that, my brain.
No, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
So I could talk all day. And if I'm talking too fast, please slow me down. I know good. I can motorboat sometimes. Just keep going. I will say, a lot of times, whatever your financial situation is, your financial situation. So as Ms. Petry mentioned, please consult someone for them to look specifically at your situation. do your own research, and do your due diligence and see what's going on with your personal situation and how you can improve it. I just kind of wanted to add on to that, and
Yes.
you know,
We're putting our disclaimer in. We're at the 30-minute mark. We're putting our disclaimer in. It covers the entire podcast. The entire podcast. Okay, so still talking about credit card, Sharif.
Mhm.
Is it okay or is it a good idea for people to have more than one credit card?
Yes, it is. But it's all about how you structure it. So I always recommend when you're first getting into credit, start with a secured card. A secured card is closer to a debit card than it is a credit card. But what it does is it shows the bank that you're worthy of holding a balance and being able to pay it back. A lot of times, how I like to structure a secured credit card is take your $200, put your $200 to your secured credit card, use your $200, pay it back immediately. Pay it back immediately. Every time you use your credit card, I would only use my credit card if I have the money available to me in that moment. If I have the cash available, is when I use a credit card. I try my absolute hardest not to use my credit card and carry that balance for the reason that we mentioned before, is because life happens. You might have 200 now in cash. Use your credit card. That $200 might not always be there. So now you're carrying a balance of that 200, and who knows when you might get that 200 back. So now you have
Plus the interest, correct?
plus the interest. Now you might have end up with a late payment. If you have only a credit limit of 200, now that's a maxed out account, which is also negative. And as you just mentioned, Ms. Petry, interest. I mean, I try to only use my credit card if I have the cash available. If something costs $200 and I have 200 in cash, I'll use my credit card just to improve my history, just to show the banks that I'm still using it, and then pay that 200 cash right back to that credit card.
Explain to us the difference between, or explain to us what is credit utilization ratio.
Yep. So it's how much you use your account. Um, so there's been a big number for the past couple of decades, honestly. The big number was 30%. If you look up anything on Google and ask what's a good credit utilization percentage, they'll tell you 30%. Only use 30% of your account. Now, because of recent economic changes from the past few years, COVID, banks started to not dock you for using over 30%. The new minimum now is 50%. Um, a lot of times people think, oh, I don't know, half of my credit account. If you don't have to, don't. Try to stay close to the 30 if you can. But if you get to 50%, it won't be the end of the world. But try to keep your credit utilization closest to 30% if you can, 50% if you have no other option.
Now, for me, and I'm going somewhere with this, Sharif, when
Yeah.
I got to college, one of the first things I did was get a credit card because, like you, I was like, free money, what?
Who wouldn't want it, right?
Who wouldn't want it? And you get a t-shirt.
There you go.
So I got the credit card, I got the t-shirt, maxed out the credit card. Was horrible because, again, was not taught about money and credit cards and credit scores growing
Mhm.
up. This is speaking directly for me. What advice would you give kids that are getting ready to go into college when it comes to credit responsibility?
I want to start with practicing good habits, practicing good money habits. As I mentioned before, I think it all starts there with habits. If you don't have really good money habits, I mean, that'll carry over and it'll hurt you in the long term. Starting out, to any students right now who's looking to get into credit, start with a secured credit card. Look at your local credit unions. Depending on what bank you have, see if they have any secured credit card options. Start with that first. Read their terms and conditions. Always read your terms and conditions when it comes
Yeah,
to credit.
definitely.
Please do that because that's where a lot of times banks will hide their interest rates, and that's definitely something that you want to look at. The lower the interest rate, the better. As I said before, if you could find something with a 0% APR, that's the best situation. But definitely look into secure credit cards for sure.
Let's talk about savings and budgeting.
Mhm.
What is the best way to create a realistic budget for someone?
Okay. Um, there's a lot of different. Excuse me. There's a lot of different. Um, what do I want to call it? I guess you could say rules that a lot of people like to use. The big one is a 50-30-20 rule, the 5-3-2. 50% for your needs, like your bills, things you need to take care of, your priorities. 30% for your wants, self-explanatory, whatever you want to do. If you like to take boat rides, you like to be on the water, if you like to go fishing. I mean, I'm a fisher guy myself. I'm gonna just put it out there. So
Yeah, I see that.
I like to go fishing. And that's just my downtime is being on the water. So anyway, I started thinking about fishing in the water. It's getting hot outside right now. I don't know where
It's like perfect timing, right?
right. I don't know where the viewers are watching from, but I mean, if you can get out on the water, if it's viable wherever you're at,
Yes.
don't regret it. 50% for your needs, 30% for your wants, 20% for savings and debt. Um, if you have any debt that you need to take care of, use 20% of whatever you're making for that. If you don't have any debt you need to take care of, put that towards your savings and eventually go ahead and invest that. But definitely take care of your debt first because as long as you're in debt, you'll never be able to make any money. A lot of times people say, "Oh, well, I have $1 million, but I'm also in debt 500,000." Well, that $1 million isn't really your $1 million. So I try to take care of any debt I can, whenever I can, as soon as I can, if it is hurting me. But as I mentioned before, there's a thing as positive debt, and that just means if you have the money in cash, you can incur that debt as long as you take care of it. But if you don't have the $200, don't spend the $200 on your credit card because that'll be negative debt.
What is the difference between emergency funds, savings accounts, and investment accounts?
Yep.
Because
So
those are three completely different things.
they are. So your emergency fund, I would say, is for unexpected cost, um, things that happen, life happens. So it's always good to have a emergency fund, something that you put away when you can. Any extra money that you have, try to put that towards your emergency fund. I mean, we all know hospitals are expensive. I mean, just the ambulance alone is expensive. If anyone's ever
Yes.
looked at their hospital bill,
Yeah.
they know. I mean, I'm not sure if you ever have, Crystal, but you know how
They're
expensive.
expensive.
Yes.
Or a
So
blown out tire that you did not expect.
there you go. I mean, anything like life happens, right? So
Yes.
that's why I always recommend having an emergency fund for sure. A savings account is just having something that you want to put away outside of your emergency fund. So this isn't so much for unexpected costs, but savings is for maybe short term or long term goals that you may have. If you want to save for, let's just say, your children's college tuition or things of that nature, people tend to put that towards a savings account for their children, um, stuff like that. So any like short term, long term goals you have would be used for a savings account. And an investment account is similar to a savings account, but not quite. An investment account is more so long term than short term. A lot of times, depending on the investment account you utilize, there are certain penalties that are in place if you pull out of that investment account for that reason because it's supposed to be long term. Not only that, a lot of investment accounts they compound over time, and I like Roth IRAs. That's my personal recommendation. Um, Not a paid advertisement, but I currently use Vanguard. They tend to be pretty good. A Roth IRA, you can do a traditional IRA. I mean, the main difference is tax purposes. If you do a traditional IRA, that is pre-taxed. If you do a Roth IRA, it's post-tax. And the biggest thing between those two differences is a traditional IRA is not bad if you feel like by the time you hit your threshold to withdraw, which a lot of times is 60 and a half, key number 60 and a half. If you feel
That
like you're,
half part kills me. Like,
yeah,
really half? Can we just keep it 60 or
keep it
61?
a secret,
Like,
like,
what are we doing here? What are we doing with this half, Sharif?
I don't know, Miss Petrie. I wish I knew. But yeah, I mean 60 and a half and a traditional IRA is not bad. Because if you feel like you'll be in a better tax bracket than you are now, then you'll benefit from that in the long term. If you're in a 30% tax bracket right now, you're making this money, you're putting all that money towards your traditional IRA. By the time you retire at 60 and a half, if you feel like you'll be in a lower tax bracket by then, it'll benefit you very highly because you're pulling all of that money out um, at a lower tax bracket. You'll still get taxed for it, but rather than paying 30% when you were putting in, maybe you're now paying 10% depending on your bracket. Just throwing out random numbers here. Depending on your bracket when you pull out. Now, difference with a Roth is everything is post-tax. So that money you put in is going to be the money you pull out. If you feel like you don't know your tax situation, if you're not sure about it, I would just recommend a Roth IRA, which is what I went with because life happens. It's hard to tell the future, especially now. Um, so I would just recommend going with a Roth. Just do post tax, put your money in. It'll be the same money you expect when you pull it out. Now, if you want to pull out before 60 and a half, be prepared to pay a penalty. A lot of brokerage accounts or brokerage companies, they charge a penalty for pulling out before that threshold.
What do you say? This is a two-part question. What
Mm-hmm.
do you say to people who say, I cannot afford to save?
Mm-hmm.
That's my first question. The second question is for those same people who say, I can't afford to save, how can they start saving? Because in my mind, I feel like I'm not going to say everyone, but most people can save something. Maybe you can't
Yeah.
save $1,000 or
Right.
$500,
Right.
but you can save something. How do you answer those two questions?
So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's okay. Don't panic. Start small if you
And
can.
let me just throw this in here. I hate to interrupt you,
No,
Sharif,
no.
but even people that are not living paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
a lot of times feel like I cannot afford to save. Like they are making what we would consider, good money, but they still feel like I can't afford to save because of their lifestyle.
I got you. You got to make money. You got to make money, spend money, make money. I got you. If you make a lot of money, you also probably have high expenses, which makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll still have the same answer. Start small, cut tiny expenses where you can, when you can. Try to set up a system. Systems work for a reason. Um, if you can set up a system to where you save automatically, you won't have to think about it. It makes it a lot easier for it to just be automated. So if you can start small, cut tiny expenses where you can, and set up a system to where you can save automatically without thinking about it, you'll be surprised. I mean, after a couple years, you might have only put $2 into an account from maybe not going to Starbucks every morning and buying. I mean, coffee I know is way more than $2 now, but
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I mean, just throwing out random numbers here. $2 over, let's say, 5 years is a lot of money.
Right.
Well, if you can start small, cut tiny expenses, those tiny expenses might become bigger expenses. And if you can automate that and create a system for yourself, whatever fits your needs or your lifestyle, I think that's where you should start.
I think the automation part that you said, Sharif, is really important because you can, whatever bank or credit union you're in, you can set up an automatic withdrawal. So they'll take $2, however much you say,
Yep.
$2 out of your checking account and automatically put it in your savings account.
Yep.
So that way it's automatically done. You don't have to do it. And then you just get used to seeing your checking account at a certain amount. And you stop missing the $2 or the $5,
Yep.
and just automatically you start hopefully spending within your means.
And that's where these good habits start to emerge.
Right.
Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm not thinking about that $2, but I know it's going towards something good, something that'll benefit me in the future. And that's where you start to have those good habits and they start to compound. And next thing you know, you'll be on top of your finances, and it's a good thing.
What is financial freedom? Is there such thing? Oh, he quiet, y'all. He quiet. That's a good question.
That was a good one. She got me. She got me. All the viewers watching, she got me. No. So financial freedom. Honestly, I want to go back to the point that I mentioned before when it comes down to perception. What financial freedom means to one person might mean something different to another. I will say, um, this economy right now, um, it's not cheap. I will say that it's not cheap, and sometimes you have to spend money to make money, and you might feel that you're kind of stuck or in a bind because you're not where you want to be financially in the moment. But as long as you start to implement these good habits that Crystal and I are mentioning right now, you can start to compound on those good habits and start to compound. Your habits will reflect to your finances, and when your habits are positive, it tends to mean that your finances become positive. And whatever freedom might mean to you is your truth. Some people might be comfortable and happy with a 20K salary, and that takes care of anything and everything they need to, and they're happy with that. Some people might need a little bit more. So when it comes to financial freedom, I think that really comes down to perception. Whatever freedom might mean to you is your truth, and I think that's what I'll say to that.
What is home ownership? How does that help? I would assume that it helps. How
Mhm.
does that help in building generational wealth?
A lot of times, people feel like owning a home builds generational wealth because people look at buying a house as an investment. Um, Reason being is because, like an investment account, you might start out at a balance, but because of compounding, it could mature. When something matures, that means what you put in has grown to something else that you could pull out. So now you have you have positive appreciation, depreciation. I'm sure any of the viewers who have bought a car before, they have heard that your car depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times with houses, they tend to appreciate because the market goes up. Now, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not too big into real estate, but just dealing with finances, you end up learning a lot about it. I will say, currently the rate I think is sitting around 6 to 7% around there. But let's just say, I mean, our grandparents bought a house back whenever for a quarter and a pack of gum. Now houses might range depending on your area. Let's just say an average of 400,000 to 600,000. So you can imagine if my great great grandparents bought their house for a quarter and a pack of gum, and now that same house in that same area, the market is looking at 400 to 500 600,000 dollars. That house has appreciated a lot, and now you can start to borrow against that. I mean, you can start to do a whole lot of things with that refinance. I mean, there's plenty of options you have when you have a positive appreciation on your home's value. The reason why people look at that like generational wealth is because that'll just keep maturing. If you keep that within the family, that home property will continue to appreciate. Best case scenario, I mean, let me reframe. Sometimes there are situations that happen within the community that might bring down the home's value. I mean, it just depends, but I will say the market tends to always go up. It tends to always go up. It might fluctuate, go down at one point, but it'll always be on a constant rise. So as long as you hold out, that house will end up being an investment that you can pass down to your kids and start to create some generational wealth.
When should people start thinking about and planning for retirement? And I'm specifically speaking about my younger community, maybe the 25, 35 year olds.
Yep.
who's like, I still have all the time in the world. I'm young, whatever, whatever. When should people start thinking about and planning for retirement?
Um, I've heard this from somewhere. I'm trying to quote it exactly, but excuse me if I don't. I believe this. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you've heard this before. Any of the viewers watching, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time to start is right now.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
yeah. So right now, I mean, start as soon as you can to start to plan for the future. The sooner the better. If you look up a Roth IRA calculator, it'll tell you from what age that you want to invest in. If you give, I believe you go on Google and look this up. If you go to the Roth IRA calculator, if you put in X amount of dollars at the age of 18, it'll tell you how much that account will mature and how much you'll be able to pull out by the time you're 60 and a half. So you can imagine there'll be a significant difference between you starting to invest at 18 versus investing at 25. That money won't mature as much because you waited a few years, and those few years make a big difference. So I believe the best time to start to plan is right now.
Yes, yes. And again, you're saying, I love it. And you know what? That saying applies to a lot of things. I know we're talking about financial literacy, but it applies to a lot of stuff in life.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. And when I
So,
heard that for the first time, I was like, wow.
yeah, that part, that part. Yes. Sharif, you have been in financial literacy, financial education, coaching, and consulting for years now. What is your intention in this space?
To keep doing this. I mean, to have great people like you, Miss Petrie, to bring
Thank
me
you.
on and educate educate our people. I mean, just like you and I who grew up not very being very literate with finances because it might have not been taught to us at home and it wasn't taught in schools. We had to go out and learn on our own and do our due diligence on our own to figure these things out. And I took it upon myself when I first got into this space, as I told you before. I wanted to just educate any and everyone that I could about anything that I've learned because I could imagine anything that I've gone through, there's probably plenty of people out there in the world that are going through the same thing. So my intention here, I mean, my goal is to just educate whenever and wherever I can. Anything that I've learned up until this point, I try to put it out there to the world because as I benefited from it, I'm sure other people can too.
My final question for you, Sharif, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Okay. Yes. A really good friend of mine, Sheik Ali Rice. He's been a very good friend of mine for a few years now. And to be quite frank, Crystal, he's the one who kind of got me into having a positive mindset on just business. And it wasn't even by his intention. I mean, just the way that Sheik carries himself, the way he speaks, he's very poised. I mean, Sheik is a very good individual, and he has a lot of background in business as well. And I mean, he just has a very good work ethic. I respect him very highly, and like I said, he's been a very good friend of mine for the past few years. And something I've also wanted to mention on here before anything else, Crystal, to all the young viewers watching, just getting out of high school, going into high school, going into college, be very mindful of who you surround yourself with. Sheik was one of those people who I surrounded myself with because of how he carried himself and how much of a positive influence he was on me. For that reason, I kept him around, and well, maybe he kept me around. I don't
Either way, you still around.
Yes, yes, and the point being is just be very mindful of who you surround yourself with because one of my mentors mentioned you tend to shadow a lot of people who you surround yourself with, and whether that be for the better, the good or not. I mean, you should very much so pay attention to that.
Listen, Sharif, that could be a whole nother podcast in itself.
Yes.
Birds of a feather flock together.
There you go.
That would be the title.
I was looking for it. You got me. There
That would be the title. Birds of a feather flock together.
Ooh, I like that.
Sharif, thank you so much for getting on here and educating about financial literacy and education. You are amazing.
Miss Petry, I couldn't have done it without you. I mean, honestly, there's a very few rare group of individuals like yourself who bring people on like me to educate these people. I mean, people like me, we wouldn't be able to do this without people like you, Miss Petry. I mean, I don't even want to put you in a category. I'm sorry. Miss Petry, you are great by yourself. I mean, just this platform, what you have built out so far, I do want to give you your flowers while I'm here. I mean, you're doing amazing. Honestly, you're doing amazing.
Sharif, you're about to break me down on my own podcast. Thank you so much for edifying me. I appreciate that so much.
You deserve all the good things coming to you, and I truly believe they are coming.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I gotta say goodbye before I start crying. And I become like the Jordan meme.
Please don't.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you, Sharif. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Petry. Again, to all the viewers out there, thank you guys for watching. Please thank Miss Petry as well for having me on here. I mean, I wouldn't be able to educate you guys without her. So thank you again.
To my community, thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and learning. You can get Sharif's podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.